What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our Big Ten football channel. We've had a little bit of a shakeup in the Big Ten East. Yes, I picked Michigan to win this division. I was hesitant when I made that pick. If you watched my prediction video, that's why I didn't pick them to actually win the Big Ten championship, because I just had a weird feeling about them. But the way their schedule played out with Ohio State at home late in the year, and I just didn't trust Ohio State with Justin Fields at that point. I thought maybe they would win this division. Now, I think it goes to Ohio State. I think they win the Big Ten East and go to the Big Ten championship game. Justin Fields obviously has been fantastic. The defense has improved, and so far, Ohio State looks like one of the top teams in the country. So we've actually bumped them up from 10-2 to 11-1, and after week 2, we had them at 11-1. So we actually already made that decision. Michigan State. This team did lose to Arizona State, so their overall record didn't change for us, but I have bumped them up to 7-2 in the conference. I think they can get there. It's tough to say because they've looked so bad at times, but you see the potential with what they did to Northwestern last week. I think they will start to play up to that potential, and I think they'll go 9-3. Same thing for Penn State. I had them at 9-3. That is up a game from where I had them in the preseason. We had them at 8-4 in the preseason. Now we do have them going 9-3. I think they have a great shot to take down Michigan at home. Michigan drops all the way to 8-4 for me. 11-1 in the preseason, now just 8-4. They've got a lot to get figured out. It's been a struggle so far. All of a sudden, Notre Dame, a team that I thought they would be able to beat at home, felt confident in making that pick. Now all of a sudden, and I think Notre Dame might actually win that game. So Michigan is on the decline, but still plenty of time to turn it around. We'll see if they improve over the next couple of weeks in our projections. Maryland started strong, then they lost to Temple, so now we're back to 6-6 for this team, which is still a game better than what we had in the preseason. Indiana 5-7, no change there, and Rutgers 2-10, no change there. So the big change here is obviously Ohio State and Michigan, with Ohio State now the number 1 team in the East. The Big Ten West is looking totally different than what I thought in the preseason. I will admit that. I was not very high on Wisconsin or Iowa. I was higher on Nebraska and maybe even Northwestern in this division. And it looks like it's going to be Wisconsin or Iowa. At this point, still a long ways to go. I don't want to jump the gun, but we did know coming into the season that this division was wide open and that any one of these teams, maybe not Illinois, but any of the other teams could have a good year and win this division. It looks like Wisconsin is going to be that team. Now, can they keep this up? We will see. Remember, a couple of years ago, they wound up, I think, undefeated in the regular season before losing to Ohio State, and it turned out that they were maybe a little bit overrated. They had a really weak schedule. This year, the schedule is much tougher. They've already got the win over Michigan. I think this Wisconsin team is for real. But because of that schedule, I do have them losing a couple of games. I think they go 10-2. They win the division, but they do lose a couple of games. And go 10-2 here. Iowa, I bumped them up to 9-3. The win over Iowa State was a big game changer for me. Nebraska, we've dropped to 7-5. We had them at 9-3 in the preseason. Colorado loss was a surprise, and I think maybe they lose an additional game in the conference. Minnesota, we had at 8-4 actually in the preseason. Now I've got them at 7-5. They have not looked very consistent so far. They've survived. They're 3-0, but they haven't looked great so far. Purdue 5-7. The loss to Nevada, I think, still comes back to haunt them, and it will keep them out of a bowl game. Northwestern at 5-7, and we've dropped on them pretty good. They were 7-5 in our preseason predictions. Now just 5-7. The offense is just awful right now for Northwestern. They've got to get that turned around, or they will miss out on a bowl game. And then Illinois, we had it 5-7 in the preseason. Now we have them at 4-8. The loss to Eastern Michigan, really the difference there. The Illini struggling so far this season. But again, with all these teams, there is still time to turn it around. All right, so we're going with Wisconsin versus Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. This will actually be a rematch. These two teams face off during the regular season. I think Ohio State probably will win that regular season matchup. I believe it's a home game for them. So I'd probably take the Buckeyes in that game. But in this Big Ten championship game, I think Wisconsin will have a real chance. Look at the way they can run the football. The question is, how good is this Ohio State defense really? They've looked really good so far, don't get me wrong, but once they start to face some teams like this, like Wisconsin, like Michigan State, Penn State, Michigan, the better teams in the Big Ten, Will they be able to shut those teams down? I think they will be able to do a pretty good job against Wisconsin. And I think that offense for Ohio State is just going to be too much for them. So I think Ohio State will actually beat Wisconsin twice this year. I've got Ohio State winning the Big Ten championship game, which is a little different than what we had in the preseason. Remember, our preseason predictions, I went with Nebraska over Michigan, and that looks like a horrible prediction right now. Right now, you look at it and you say, probably not going to happen. But there's a little long ways to go. I still have some confidence in both of those teams to at least maybe make things interesting. But I'm going to say that that Ohio State and Wisconsin actually get there. Again, I'm not in any way saying that I'm going to go back and pick Nebraska or Michigan at this point. I'm just saying I don't think they're out of it. I don't think you should just totally write those teams off. It's a long season. A lot of things could happen. Injuries could happen. But it looks right now like it will be Wisconsin versus Ohio State. How about our odds to win the East Division first? We've got Ohio State at 50%, Michigan at 25%, Michigan State at 15%, Penn State at 10%. Yes, I still think Michigan has a better chance than Michigan State and Penn State to win the Big Ten East. I know they've looked horrible so far, but it's a long season. Like I just said, long ways to go. They could get some things figured out on offense. The defense hasn't been as good as we thought it would be either. So the talent's there. We know this Michigan team is talented. They just got to put it together. The coaching has got to be better. It's probably not going to happen, though. Again, I'm only giving them a 25% chance. I feel pretty confident that Ohio State is going to win this division. It's really whether or not Ohio State's going to go undefeated or go 11-1. That's the thing I'm trying to figure out right now. But I feel very confident that the Buckeyes will win the Big Ten East. Michigan State and Penn State, you can't write them off just yet. Those teams, though, to me, just aren't quite good enough to seriously maybe take out Ohio State in this division. Now, one of them might could upset Ohio State, don't get me wrong, but consistently throughout the whole season, I don't think that they can get through there at 11-1. I think Ohio State can, and I think that's why they will win the East. I still think the Big Ten West is somewhat wide open. Yes, Wisconsin is the clear favorite, but if you're trying to pick Wisconsin versus the field, I would actually go with the field because I think there's still a lot of teams that are going to challenge this Wisconsin team this season. I've got Wisconsin at 45%. Again, by far the favorite in this division. Iowa's not too far behind at 25%, and I've still got Nebraska at 20%. Not necessarily because I think they're going to be on the same level as Wisconsin and Iowa. They might not be, but their schedule really sets up well for them with a lot of big games at home, and if they can just pull off some upsets, they're going to be in this thing at the end of the season. So that's why I still give Nebraska a 20% chance, even though they haven't looked great so far this season. Everyone else will go 10%. Minnesota, they haven't played a conference game yet. I don't think Purdue has either. So we'll see what those teams look like once they get into conference play. Who else do we have here in the West? Northwestern's looked awful. I'll see if they can maybe get it turned around, but I think they're probably out of it. And then Illinois has not looked good at all, so I don't think they have any real shot. But still, Wisconsin, to me, so far, it looks like the favorite, and it looks like they will most likely face Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship. Let's talk about the odds to actually win the Big Ten Championship game, and keep in mind your odds to get to the game are going to have a pretty big impact here. Ohio State, 50%. I think it's Ohio State versus the field when you talk about the Big Ten Championship. It feels like they are clearly better than anyone else. Wisconsin, maybe in that same class, but it's kind of early to tell right now. We've seen Wisconsin play a struggling Michigan team. Well, let's see how they do against a team that's maybe coming in hitting on all cylinders and see how they do against Ohio State in a few weeks. And that's going to be a huge game. So Wisconsin at 20%, I don't think they have they're the second best team here in the Big Ten, but still, that's not a great chance. Michigan, I still have at 15%. They have a favorable schedule with some games at home. If they can get it turned around, I think Michigan's still in this thing. And then everyone else we have at 15%. Penn State, Michigan State, Nebraska, I think would be the most likely teams to potentially win the Big Ten if it was not one of these other three teams. Iowa in that conversation as well. But it feels like Ohio State is most likely going to win this conference once again. And I'm saying they have a 50% chance, which is actually really high when you consider there are 14 teams in this conference. So a 15% chance for Ohio State. What do you guys think? Who do you have winning the Big Ten at this point? How have your predictions changed? Anything you want to add to this video, feel free to do that. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more here on our Big Ten football channel.